Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, 2025, a Construction Tech Odyssey. So my name is Kris Lengieza. I am the Senior Director of Business Development and Global Partnerships at Procore. And this is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. I really want to take an exploration into what the next 5 years is going to look like for the construction industry and how technology is really going to change the way that we build. But first, let's talk a little bit about me, really where I came from, what my role is at Procore. I really came from construction industry. I spent about 15 years as a general contractor working in companies of various different sizes, from $1 billion plus all the way down to several $100 million. And really my passion and my focus was improving the way that we built. And I loved technology from a young age. So I really wanted to integrate more and more of that technology into the build process. So what better way than to join Procore? I spent a few years as a Procore customer before I came over to Procore, really focused on driving adoption and operational excellence within inside of a $300 million general contractor, and the ability for us to deliver more value to our customers. And we did that some ways by leveraging technology, in other ways by just improving the process that we had inside of the company. Today, I lead our marketplace team. So I lead the opportunity to work with technology firms from across the globe and help them integrate with the Procore platform so that we can drive more value to our customers, to their customers, and to the industry as a whole, and see how we can improve the way that we build every single day. So let's get into it. As many of you know, the construction industry is a large industry and it is growing fast, right? In 2017, we had over a $10 trillion global construction spend, which is a significant amount of money. And this number continues to go up every single day and every single year on how much we're investing into the industry. Because no matter what industry you're in, you need a place to work. You need places to live. You need places to go to school. So there is constant growth happening inside of this industry. Now, even in today's environment, where we're dealing with a COVID pandemic across the globe, construction has continued to show its resiliency and continued to show the growth of certain sectors where we're continuing to see investments in the growth of construction across the globe. Now, the one problem that is consistent over the last 25 to 50 years is that construction has been a traditionally analog industry. We do things in paper-based processes. We're somewhat inefficient in how we operate on a day-to-day basis. And even so much that McKinsey in their research found that construction was next to last, only above agriculture and hunting, as far as how much we have digitized our industry. Now, why is this important? Well, this is important because this leads to rework. Nearly $500 billion plus of rework was spent in 2018. And many of those dollars spent on rework were because of poor data, poor communications happening on side of the job site. And there's a productivity gap that exists in our industry as well. We don't have enough workers to get the work done. And we have a gap of almost $1.6 trillion in the global GDP annually that we can be gained by introducing technology and innovation to our industry so that we can increase the production inside of our industry and deliver what we actually need to be built for our entire world. So let's talk a little bit about the transition that construction has been evolving from. This analog to digital to insights transition. We started in a place where we were dealing with paper drawings, paper plans, clipboards, checklists, and really that was pretty much commonplace everywhere up until the early 2000s. And in some job sites, it's still commonplace today. Now, we did see an introduction of things like the internet and mobile devices and tablets happening in the early 2000s into the last couple of years, where people were really starting to say, hey, I can take this information to the field. I can collect this in a better manner. I can use a tablet to capture information from the field. I can look at a set of plans on an iPad instead of having to drag a trailer full of plans around a job site. But really what we're doing now is we're starting to evolve again. And that is into this third era of construction, which is really driving the business based on insights and the data that we have captured from the field, and improving the way that we are going to build and that we're going to operationalize inside of our companies. Now, there's a lot of different technologies that are influencing this for the future of construction, right? We've heard about things like IoT and augmented reality. We've heard about themes like prefabrication and modularization and even some advanced materials. But there's one thing that almost all of these technologies that were presented by the Boston Consulting Group as the things that were going to change our industry, they all have one thing in common, or the majority of them have one thing in common, and that is they really are driven by data. And why is that so important? Well, when we talk about everything, with the exception of really 3D printing and advanced materials, they're based in the data that we collect and the data that we visualize and how we collaborate around that data. And then how do we automate processes on the job site based on the information and the data that we have, right? So let's just take a real quick look at a few of these. So when we talk about collecting information, collecting things from the job site, whether that be filling out a checklist, or that be snapping photos, or that be collecting information in a more automated manner using IoT devices, or maybe even some drones to capture photos of the job site. Now, once we've collected a lot of that data and information, we can then visualize it. Now, we visualize that in many different ways, and the ways that we visualize how we build, whether that be augmented reality and virtual reality, that could be building information model and tying some of that data to the visuals of 3D modeling. These are ways that help us visualize what it is that we need to go and execute out in the field. Now, next, we need to start and focus on collaborating around that information and that data. And this is where the cloud and real-time collaboration are really kicked into play, giving us access to this information from just about anywhere on just about any device, so that we can have more real-time collaboration and conversations. Now, you remember that rework number and how much of it was dedicated to poor communications and poor data? The cloud is really helping us drive this forward. And then we're able to take that data and actually run analytics and start to have visualization of how it is impacting our projects in a much more simple and more consumable manner. Now, we can also automate a lot of the construction process, whether that be the automating of collection of information or automating the prefabrication and modularization by bringing manufacturing techniques to construction as well. And a lot of that is based on data and information and the real-time collaboration back and forth between the fields and also between the office and the manufacturing side of things. So let's dive into a few of these technologies. So IoT, right? What is it? What does it mean to us? IoT is really the ability to have connected devices on the job site and being able to stream information from the job site into these systems, into these platforms. It's made up of 360 cameras and laser scanners and human trackers and vehicle trackers, all different ways of inputs, taking information from the field and getting them into that master database or into that platform that we can then go and analyze them more. Now, here's a great example of being able to take 360 photos through site walks on a job site. One of our partners, Struction Site, does a great job of capturing this information in a process that used to take hours to walk an entire job site and document it with photographs. They are able to capture that information in a matter of minutes, as they can walk several thousand square feet in just a few minutes using 360 cameras and 360 video. Now, you can then take that information and plug it in right inside and start to collaborate on it, right? So this is an example of one of our partners, OpenSpace, taking that information and allowing those who might be sitting remotely. We all work in a world now where people are not able to be in the same place all the time. Well, this is a great tool for us to be able to identify potential defects and safety observations and things that we notice inside of those photos and be able to drive action from them. And then there's the ability for us to capture more accurate and extremely precise data from the site as well, with things like laser scanning. When I first came into this industry and I started using a laser scanner almost 12 years ago, they were a couple $100,000, $500,000 for some of them, and they were really big and clunky and hard to move around. Now the price has come down significantly on those to the point where you can see one of those Leica units on the far right, the black BLK 360 that you can get for just under $16,000. So the barrier to entry to be able to capture measurable, extremely precise data on the job site has significantly lowered as well. And we can take that information, we can do it faster than we ever have before, allowing us to engage more and more field personnel into the process of collecting data in more real time. And we can do it more often so we can compare what has happened from week to week and get actual progress of the job site as well. We can also do it with devices that are as small as an iPhone, that can fit in your back pocket, that can capture measurable photographs, taking 360 scan photos that allow you to measure off them to document critical dimensions and to make sure that we have the information we need, maybe it be for an RFI or for as-built as well. And this is changing the way that field personnel interact with those who are not on the job site and how they document from project to project as well. Now that we've moved a little bit past kind of the collection phase, let's take a little bit of a look at the visualization side of things, right? So as we visualize and we see more and more 3D models coming into the space, this is not new technology, but it certainly is new the way that we're collaborating around it and the way that we are interacting with field teams with it, getting more and more of them engaged in the entire process. And so what we're seeing here is the ability for us to democratize those 3D visualizations, get them into the hands of everyone on the project, excluding those necessarily just having to have a specific piece of software, so that we have now a collaboration point for just about everyone. This is an example for us of our Procore coordinations tools, which allows us to take those viewpoints of specific things that we find in the model that we might need to have feedback from the field or feedback from other stakeholders on the project that can deliver this information and take timely action. In addition to that, our ability to take those models and easily navigate them on an iPad and take them out to the field is incredibly important as well. We're seeing foremen, those who may not have really adopted any technology in their careers, really jump into this technology and take advantage of the ability to see the model out in the space that they're about to build. Now they can quickly and easily navigate this with commonly used gestures, pinch to zoom, thumb controllers, things that they do on their phone every single day for their personal lives are now translating into how they can visualize these models as well. And one of the best things that we've seen here is the ability for those people to give feedback back to the office as well, to document things that aren't showing up the way that they expected to, and actually increasing that collaboration and communication as well. Now, virtual reality and augmented reality has also significantly improved as well. Now, this is an old image, but the thing that I really like about this is I like the pretend story that I think this tells, which is there's a contractor, there's an architect, there's an owner that are all visualizing the building that they're talking about, and they're able to collaborate around that and see the same things and interact with it. Now, virtual reality has come quite a long way, and so has augmented reality, but the ways that we're collaborating with it are really starting to improve, and that's incredibly important. The reason that that is so important is it allows us to have more streamlined communications and to identify issues earlier in the build process, which eliminates more and more of that rework as well. Now, we then talk about taking a lot of those augmented reality devices out to the field as well. And that allows us to deliver, information to our foremans, just the same way that we had those 3D models that we were looking at on our iPad. We can now visualize them in context and identify things like punch lists or discrepancies in the model. We can also validate installation to give us progress updates. And we can also get data and information from those models that might be critical, such as model numbers and pieces and parts. Now, this is still a little bit on the new side of the technology and how people are using augmented reality. But with the recent release of LiDAR on the iPads and on iPhones, we anticipate that we're going to see even more of these augmented reality applications in the field as well. Now, Another area that has always been a concern of ours is the ability for us to bring new workers into the job site. And how is it that we are able to train them and to pass along a lot of that tribal knowledge? So another great example of how people are using augmented reality is the ability for those to do remote training and remote assistance. And this is an example. The RealWear HMT1 allows for someone who might be, let's say, a superintendent who just can't get around the job site the way that they used to, but still has 30, 40, 50 years of knowledge of a building and how to get things done on the job site. They can assist potentially someone who is newer to the industry, who has not potentially come across some of these situations before, and see what they're seeing and pass along documents to them so that they can go ahead and make a repair to an air handler, or they can go ahead and complete an installation that might be a little bit tricky because there's a situation that they have not encountered before. This ability to remote train and remote mentor is going to help us bring more tradesmen into the industry and to get them up to speed even faster than we could have if they had to rely on everyone else being physically there with them. So let's take one step further and start to talk about the real collaboration, getting people together on the cloud, getting them working together, starting to have them look at that data and that information. No longer are we in a place where everything happens in the office or everything happens in the field. These folks need to collaborate on a day-to-day basis. And in some cases, like this project manager, half of your job is spent out in the field and the other half of your job is spent in the office. So you need to have access to that same information no matter where you are, no matter which device you're using at that moment. And that's incredibly important. And that really does have a significant impact on that communication and rework. Because if we all have access to the most relevant information when we are doing the task at hand, we can make sure that we're not making decisions based on out-of-date information, or if something's missing, we can ask a question and we can get answers to that. And that's why it's so important for us to see information and data bridge across devices, to bridge across locations, and to really bring everyone together so that they're working off of one core set of information across one platform that is easy for use and easy for them to navigate. It's one of the reasons that we've put so much focus at Procore on building an experience that has parity, whether you're working on the mobile device, a tablet, or the web browser, and that everybody's working on the same information in real time. Now, connectivity still tends to be a bit of a problem on some job sites, and that's why it's also important to make sure that you can still have access to this information even when you don't have connectivity as well. Now, we also see the layering in of artificial intelligence and machine learning on top of a lot of these types of technology as well. And this allows us to expedite the way that we collect information from the field, the way that we gather it, and it allows us to do it in the way that we normally talk to people. So for example, this is showing a punch list item that is being collected just by having a conversation with your phone, whether it be through text message or through voice. You can tell it, hey, where did I find this issue? Here's a photo of it, what happened? And then that creates a punch list item or an observation inside of Procore for them, for someone else to go ahead and take that action. And similarly, this lowers the barrier to entry of getting more and more individuals and taking the collection of the data out to the field where they are closer to the work and they are closer to what is actually happening on every single project. Now, we can also layer in more and more artificial intelligence and machine learning on top of all the photos and the documents and the data that we're capturing on the job site to give us more insights. This is an example of one of our partners, SmartVid, who is analyzing thousands of photos taken on the job site to identify potential safety risks. And it's not to say that this concrete foreman or this concrete worker is going to get written up because they don't have their safety vest on, but they're looking for trends. They're looking to identify, are we seeing a higher incidence of missing PPE? Should we have a toolbox talk about how important PPE is and what the appropriate PPE is for a job? Because we know that those are early leading indicators to potential accidents and incidents on the job site, which can lead to loss on the project as well. Now, visualizing data and all this information that is captured on a job site can be difficult. We're used to looking at spreadsheets and reports that are 30, 40 pages long, trying to find that one nugget. I still remember sitting down with the president of my old construction company and poring over reports line item by line item that allowed us to highlight things that were outliers. Well, now we're able to leverage a lot of analytics tools that have been launched into general industry on top of this data, making it a lot easier for us to actually visualize and see what's happening without having to pore over those reports and bubbling up that information to the top where it's most important for us. Now, this is just one example of taking a look at specifically RFIs. What percentage are closed? Which percentage are open? What's the average days to close? Seems like it's really high. We need to probably work with our design team to find ways to cut back on that. And similarly, this allows us to focus on the areas of where we need to have improvement. And this can be done on top of all of the data that we're automating and collecting a lot easier and faster from the field because we've put tools in their hands to make it easier for them to capture. Now, when we talk about the last part, which is kind of automating the prefabrication and modularization, the data here is a little bit different. It's informed by a lot of the information that we're capturing from previous projects, by the data and information that we're capturing from the design to allow us to automate a lot of these processes. And so while general industry has seen robotics come in and have a huge impact on how they manufacture, construction is relatively new to this. Now, we're probably a ways away from seeing a job site that looks like this with hundreds of robots working on something in an assembly line, because in construction, we don't build on assembly lines. Every project's a little bit different, and we have to take the work to the field. Now, when we start to talk about prefabrication and modularization and being able to build a lot of pieces and parts in a factory, these things will apply as well. But I still think we're a little bit of a ways away from seeing robots sit right next to us on the job site and work side by side with us. But what robots are really good at is doing repetitive tasks that might be difficult or could not be efficient for others. Now, there is a robot company out of Japan that has been developing a drywall hanging robot. And I apologize for not having the video queued up here, but one of the things that's really important is there are people working on this. We're a ways away from seeing a robot like this on the job site that's actually hanging and screwing in drywall because it's just not efficient yet. It's very expensive, and the cost of labor would not necessarily make it a good ROI. However, it's promising to see that there are people working on projects like this and trying to deliver more value by leveraging robotics. Now, what we will see on job site is the ability to leverage robotics in the forms of things like exoskeletons that help us work a little bit more efficiently, that take strain off of our bodies, that allow us to avoid injuries, like these exoskeletons that allow us to work above head for long, prolonged periods without the strain that typically it comes along with that. If you've ever tried to hang a chandelier or a light fixture in your house, after about 10 minutes, your fingers go numb because you haven't put your hands above your head for that long period of time. Imagine what an electrician who does that all day feels like when they get home. Now, in addition to that, we're also seeing the things like movement of materials and autonomous vehicles affect construction. And the reason here is that sometimes you're just moving material back and forth, and that's a very good task for something that can be automated. This all works well and fine and good until you lose Wi-Fi, and then the trucks don't know what to do because they can't communicate anymore. Fortunately, at this mining site, they just decided to stop in place and didn't go out of control. But it's a great example of how this is being done on a huge mining site. There are applications that could happen on a job site. Think about all of the materials that get moved around from a job to job, and things like tool delivery and trash movement that we spend a lot of time with labor on. Now, in addition to that, we've seen robots more specifically designed for our industry around going out and moving around a rugged job site. And the Spot robot by Boston Dynamics is a great example of that. This is a robot that is made to carry small payloads such as cameras and laser scanners to automate the capture on the job site. And it's a great example here by one of our customers, Pomerlo, who is leveraging this technology to scan their job sites on a more regular basis. Now, this gives us better insight because we know what has been done on a day-to-day basis, whereas it may not be cost effective to send a scanning crew out every day. If you can come in at the end of the day and train a robot to walk a same path and scan every day, you could have scans for a very low cost on a more regular basis. Now, when we talk about modular and prefab, we're talking about taking things to a factory. And everybody on modular goes right to building units and literally an entire apartment or an entire bathroom. But there's a lot of different stages of prefabrication or pre-assembly that can be taken advantage of here. And we're seeing more and more of this pick up in the MEPs where they're prefabricating ductwork, or even in some of the electricals where they're just pre-assembling hangers. And this is a movement which is moving more and more of construction to offsite. And this is really important because the data that informs us this as a positive ROI is the productivity metrics that we can get out of doing this work. And that drives us to invest in figuring out how manufacturing can have a place in construction and how we can do more with it from job to job. Now, remember those robots that I think said didn't have a place in construction because we don't work on assembly lines? Maybe we're not as far off as we think we are. This is a photo from a Katera assembly plant where they are building literally wall panels on an assembly line. So these robots actually make a lot of sense there. And as we see more and more types of these sub-assemblies being built in a factory, it makes a ton of sense to start to engage more and more robotics in the manufacturing process on the job site. So COVID's a reality for all of us, and we've seen across the world some of these prefabrication and modularization projects really expedite the way that people can respond in times of emergency. It's only a matter of time where they see how we can take these things that are done in response to emergency applied to general building. And very similarly, a lot of technology is seeing adoption right now because, well, there's no other way to get the job done. And I can't imagine that some of this technology is going to be walked back when we leave COVID, right? Things like adopting collaboration tools and messaging tools because we're not in the same place, they're not going to get put back in the box. We're using them. We're using them effectively. And this is a great time to be in construction because we're seeing the advancement happen to us. So what does all this mean? Well, this means there's a huge amount of opportunity out there for our industry to improve. There's opportunity out there for you as an individual to find ways to be more efficient, to make a difference in your company, and let's be honest, make a difference globally. Every building and project that you build as a builder is incredibly important to someone who then occupies that or uses that facility for a place of education, a home, or a place of work. And we need to do better and be able to deliver those projects faster to meet the demand that is in our industry. So I wanted to say thank you to everybody and really appreciate you spending some time with me. If you have any questions about construction technology or where some of these technologies are going, I encourage you to reach out to me. Email me, hit me up on Twitter, find me on social media. I'm happy to have a conversation. I love this topic, and I'm really excited to see where the technology in our industry is going and is continuing to evolve. So thank you very much. Appreciate it, and thanks for joining us.